Hello. Welcome to Reading Time. My name's Time, and today we're reading the Percy Jackson and the Olympians series. Let's get to reading. Percy Jackson and the Olympians is a 5-book series by Rick Riordan, following the adventures of Percy Jackson as he discovers that the ancient Greek gods are real and still alive. In addition, he finds out that he is actually a demi-god, a child of one of those ancient gods. As I said, this is a 5-book series. The first book is Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Lightning Thief. The second book is The Sea of Monsters. The third book is The Titan's Curse. The fourth book is The Battle of the Labyrinth. And the fifth book is The Last Olympian. Rick Riordan has also written some other series from this main Percy Jackson series that also follows the Greek gods. He also has written other series that follow other ancient gods, such as the Egyptian gods and the Norse gods. Percy Jackson is a very engaging book series. It brings all of these ancient classic literature elements from Greek mythology and puts it into a modern setting. The narration is humorous and the characters are very dynamic. They all have flaws and strengths, and a lot of these characters grow throughout the series, which is really important because our main character, Percy Jackson, starts off the series at the age of 12 and ends the series at the age of 16. So it's those formative years where he's learning and growing and developing a lot that this series takes place. I really enjoy this series. I definitely give it 5 stars. The only book that I don't like as much as the other ones is the third book. There's a couple of characters in there that don't seem to grow as much for me or don't have as much development as I see in some of the other characters. But generally speaking, all of the books are ones that I really like, even The Titan's Curse. So I would highly recommend this series to anyone. If you're someone who particularly likes Greek mythology, this is a good one. Or if you're even someone who is a struggling reader, you don't really enjoy reading, I've known quite a few people who read this series as struggling readers and still enjoy it or become more avid readers because of this series. This series is written for a 4th through 8th grade reading level. These readers in that age range would be able to enjoy the storyline really well and also understand it. It does benefit, though, to have some background knowledge in Greek mythology just to have a better understanding of what some of the characters and stories are based on. But readers don't necessarily have to have that background knowledge. That's something that could be achieved while they're reading. They can read these books simultaneously with some of those ancient Greek myths. Content-wise, this series does have some things to be aware of. As far as violence goes in this series, there is quite a bit of violence. A lot of it is between our main characters, the demigod heroes and monsters, but some of this violence is life-threatening, and we do see characters die, especially a little later in the series. Additionally, there is one character in the first book, Percy's stepfather, who is not likable. He's not meant to be likable, and it's hinted near the end of the book that he has been physically abusing Percy's mother, so that is also something to be aware of. As far as substance usage goes, there are characters who drink and smoke in the series, but that is not very frequent. Most of the characters, even if they are seen as characters that would party, or even Dionysus, the god of wine, they limit themselves to soda. For sexual content, there isn't a lot of it. We have kissing between some characters, especially later in the series, but because this is a book series based on the ancient Greek gods, there are extramarital affairs that occur because that's how we get the demigods, is the ancient Greek gods having relations with mortal beings. As I said, this series is a fantastic adaptation of the ancient Greek myths. It brings all of those myths into a modern setting with a modern lens. And as such, I think that this series could be used in a few different ways to either introduce Greek mythology or classic literature in general, or it can be used to talk about adaptations. Adaptations of older literature has become more popular in recent years. There's a lot of fairy tale adaptations. So it might be a fun activity to have a young reader pick a Greek myth of their choice and write their own adaptation of it in a modern setting, or even take another piece of classic literature and mimicking Percy Jackson in kind of that format to write their own modern adaptation of that classic piece of literature. There are also a few concepts, ideas, themes that are very central to this series that I think are important to discuss when reviewing this series. The first idea that we see throughout the series is family relationships, and the idea that there are many different types of families, many different ways that a family can look, and that family relationships are complicated. If you are familiar with Greek mythology at all, you know that the word complicated in defining family relationships for the Greek gods is an understatement. And as you can imagine, that translates to this series. There are a lot of situations in this series where that idea is examined and flipped on its head. Something else that I think is really cool about this series is because it's centered around demigods who have a mortal and an immortal parent, the demigods usually live with their mortal parent. And because of that, there's situations of single parent households. We also have step parents and step families present throughout the series. And I think it's really cool that Riordan has been able to write something that shows that not all families look the same or work the same. Another major theme that you see in every single book is that you cannot escape fate. Each book in this series, the plot for that particular book is usually centered around a specific prophecy given by the oracle. Often, when this prophecy is given, it's hard to know what it exactly means. And sometimes what you can predict a line would mean ends up changing, and you don't really find out what the prophecy is meant to prophesy until the events actually happen. This does bring up the question of, do these characters have free will? Do they have the ability to make their own choices, or is everything set in stone and everything destined to happen? There are some cases in the series where it also seems like the gods actually know what a prophecy means. And in those cases, they don't usually give any information because they are afraid that if they do give information about the prophecy or what it means, that decisions will be made that will make the process more difficult. So when reading the series, it would be really good to track the theme of fate, prophecy, free will, and have a discussion about it with any younger readers. Do they think that these characters are making their own choices, that they're able to make decisions? Do their decisions actually affect the outcome? What would happen if they made a different decision? How would it affect that outcome? It could lead to some really interesting discussion. Now, as always, I did scratch off the poster square for this week. We have Percy Jackson and the Olympians all the way at the bottom right here. We have a trident to represent Poseidon. And like I said, I really do enjoy and recommend this series. I might actually end up reading one of Rick Riordan's other series and reviewing it just for fun. He doesn't have any other series on this poster, but I have heard a lot of recommendations for some of his other series, and Percy Jackson's the only one that I've actually finished out of everything he's written, so I might jump into that. I'll let you know if I do. With that being said, which of Rick Riordan's series do you enjoy the most? Is there one that you would particularly recommend? And what do you think of Percy Jackson? If you are interested in following along with this reading adventure, feel free to subscribe to the channel or follow me on my Facebook or Instagram pages for updates about what I'm reading. And as always, have a marvelous week and a wonderful read.